guys! Somewhat tempting to film this on a very windy day, so like the lights aren't on me. I'm gonna try. So these are all the books I read in April, and I'm gonna leave the very best one for last, so you can either skip forward or, yeah, just sit through them all. I read 11 books in April, so. I got this on my little Verona Shakespeare pad here. Try to remember all 11 books. So a bunch of books I read at the very beginning of April were because I had an ear infection, or an eye infection. So I didn't have much to do all day, and I just sat around listening to audiobooks because I really, really didn't feel good. So the first 3 books, one I read, and the other 2 I listened to audiobooks. But the first 3 were a trilogy by Erin, and it was Paper Princess, Broken Prince, and Twisted Palace. So these I either checked out from the library or checked out the audiobook from the library. So I don't have any of them with me. But these books were okay. I probably give them like a 2, 3. They're steamy reads. They are easy to get into, so they're really good books to recommend to people who don't read often and who want something that's easy to slip into. But they are steamy. I would put them in the new adult, even though this is like a YA age. It's like a 17, 18-year-old, but I definitely put them in new adult because of their steaminess. The romantic interest is the second book, and then it's their whole family wrapping up at the end. But the first book is just about a young girl who has a very troubled start in life, or a troubled childhood in life. So she doesn't have good representation of what she should become, and her mom like stripped and did drugs and died from cancer, and so just nothing in her life has really gone, and she's very poor, but she gets adopted by a family who's very wealthy, but they're also a very troubled family because they have no mom representation in the family life, and the dad's not really there. Used to be a military man, but he's very wealthy now, and so the boys, he has 4 boys, 4 or 5, that are quite a bit of troublemakers at the same time. So she helps them a little bit, and they help her, and that's the story. First, there's a bit of a romantic side to all of it, but they're very easy read. I'd recommend them definitely for new adult age or adult. They're steamy novels, so if that's what you're into, maybe next Valentine's Day. And my biggest recommendation for them is pick up all 3 because they're so addicting and they're so easy to read that they leave on huge cliffhangers, and you have to read the next book, and they're so easy to read you just want to jump into the next one. I wonder if I hadn't checked them out in order, if I would have just set them aside and not finished them. I'm not sure, but they're so addicting at the time, I just kept going. Next book I actually have, and I bought, Voyager by Diana Gabaldon. I finally decided which version of these books I like. I like the paperback in this size because they are such thick books. I thought the little one would be too much. This follows Claire and Jamie once again, and their lives are quite separate and quite different in this book. I know a lot of people are waiting, so I won't give too much away in this book. I know they're waiting to read this right before this season comes out in September, but it's a hefty novel. It'll take you a month or so. It's 20 years set in the future for Jamie and Claire, and there comes to play her daughter in it and other family members and all their past of what has happened to both of them separately in the past 20 years. There is pirates, there's a lot of new adventures. It seems like whenever these 2 are together, nothing ever goes smoothly, and everything just kind of turns south. So yeah, it's a really good one. I would say my favorite still is Dragonfly and Amber in this series, but this one is really good too, and I'm glad I actually bought this one. I'm going to do the next 2, which I don't have with me as well, and then I'll get into the books I still have checked out from the library. So the other one is, I listened to audiobook also during that period when I was sick, was Replica, and this, I thought it was going to be my best favorite book of the month because it was written so well. I love Lauren Oliver books. Even though she does very much of a YA scene, I can still read them as an adult, and I'm still intrigued because somehow they still relate to my life. And she has come along a far way from, I think Before I Fall was one of her first novels, and Requiem. She's come a long way from them. From all of those, I loved Panic, but this one, Replica, is probably my new favorite of hers. So Replica follows the story of Lyra and Gemma. And I loved Lyra's story a little bit more than Gemma's, even though I thought Lyra's was harder to get into and harder to read. I don't know. So Lyra and Gemma, you read the same exact story, so you flip the book. I don't think it matters which one you read first. They start you on Lyra, but I think you could have read Gemma first. I might have liked Gemma more if I had read her first, because it's the same exact story you're reading from two different perspectives, and they're not throughout the book. It's just two separate books. So Lyra, though, it's hard to get into because hers is like the inside story, and it's about an island where these people are kept and for scientific experiments. And then Gemma's story comes in because somehow she's connected to that island. Lyra's story is so closed-minded because she doesn't have an open mind to the world, and she's very prone to like keeping herself safe. That's her number one goal in life, is just being safe and having things be redundant. Really hard to read. It's kind of hard to get into a little bit because her mind is so closed off, and you really see that when you jump to Gemma. And then, so the characterization of this book, it could not be more different. They intersect perpendicularly, but they're completely different characters, and you can completely tell just by the way the author writes them. And that's another reason I write this book, because the characters are so distinctive and such different people. I really like them. So I don't want to give too much away, but it's really good. It's definitely worth a read for Lauren Oliver. And the next one, so this one's by Rosamund Hodge, and it's Cruel Beauty, and it has Nyx and Ignifex are the main characters. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It tells you flat out on the book, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So the other books I recommended for fairy tale retellings, like Scarlet and Winter and that whole series, I prefer those more because there's a bit of a more suspended reality there that I can believe. Like sometimes in those stories, I didn't know if they were going to end up exactly like the fairy tale was, where when I was reading this book, or when I was reading Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, to me that's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Those books, they both follow the original story so much, even though they're different worlds. It's predictable. So I put those two on like the same level. They're both predictable. If you like Beauty and the Beast retelling, then I would say go for it. I was listening to another one of hers, and I haven't finished it yet, but it was a Red Riding Hood one. And so the premise of this one, of this Beauty and the Beast retelling, Nyx lives in a world where they have to sacrifice themselves to some sort of demigod, which is who Ignifex is. And she's the one that sacrificed. She has to marry him, and she is going to be killed, or that's what she thinks is going to happen. So it's Beauty and the Beast retelling. You get the picture. Okay, sorry, I got a phone call, so I'm gonna redo Doon here. Okay, so this is like an upgraded fairy tale. If you have like 6 to 9-year-olds who read a bunch of fairy tales, I would say this is between the ages of 10 to 18. It's definitely a YA novel. There's nothing too risque in it by any means. This is Doon by Carey, Corp, and Lorie Langdon. He's an American writer who wrote about Scotland, so it's not the most true representation, I guess, of Scotland, as you could say. But it's pretty well done. And these two writers write a fantasy world within Scotland, because there's a lot of myths and legends and different worlds in Scotland. And so this is the one they created. And so Doon is told from two perspectives. It's told Veronica and McKenna. And they end up going to this fairy tale land. I think you can see on the cover here, it's got the castle of Doon. And they're brought there by ghosts who are both princes. So there's princesses and kings, and there's a portal door that's only open sometimes, and there's mystical rings. So this is like an upgraded fairy tale for a YA teen. I didn't personally like love it, but if I was that age, I would have loved this book. It was super easy to read. It's a one-day read if you're an adult. And I think the next two books I might go ahead and pick up and read just because it was so easy to read. And so the first book centers more on Veronica. It tells you every chapter who's who, but I think the next book will be more of McKenna's story. So, and then I'm not sure what happens in the last one, but we shall see. And then the next one is also very much in that same exact category of YA, 10 to 18. This is Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. And this one is a simple and sweet story. And it wasn't like so much so when I'm an adult that I was like, oh, I love that book, but it is what it is. It was spot on to that age group category once again. It follows a girl named Anna and a boy named Etienne. Etienne? Is that how you say it? I think. Etienne. I don't know how to say his name. He's French. But she goes to an American boarding school in France. So all the people there are American. And it's just about her romantic life and then her eventual kiss in the story. So it's a pretty innocent story, and it's cute, and it's good for that age group. Once again, I read this easily in a day, and yeah, it's a light read. I mean, I don't know if I'd recommend this to adults, but new adult or young adult, definitely in that category. I wouldn't buy this one either, just like Doon, but I would recommend it to somebody of that age. This, once again, is in that very same category. This is the third and final one I read, and it is Forevermore by Cindy Miles. There are things I really liked about this book. So this is an all-encompassing one book and done, just like Anna and the French Kiss was. This is also plays on the Scottish stuff. Their accents and stuff are a little lacking, I feel like, but this is also like mythical, and you see this book has huge writing, and it is super short, so this one really can be read in a day. So this is definitely 10-18. It's got the innocence in it. Logan is a ghost in the story, and Ivy is the main heroine. So there is a castle, and there's a great amount of wealth in this story once again, and there are ghosts, and it's a pretty good story. I don't want to give too much away, but it's right in that category again. It's a very innocent book, and it's easy to read, and it's about Scotland. It's not so, I mean, Scottish writers would probably like hate this kind of thing, but it's by an American writer, so if this is up your alley, yeah, I would recommend this one, once again, for young adults and teens. The last book before we move on to my favorite book is definitely an adult. I wouldn't even say this is new adult. I'd say this is just flat out adult. I would put this is Dark Lover. It's the first in the, what series is Dark Lover? The Black Dagger and Brotherhood series. It was recommended to me. It's by J.R. Ward. Super steamy novel. I don't know if I'd put it in erotica, but I'd put it in like fantasy romance. So this is like a Sookie Stackhouse book. If anybody read or watched True Blood, I mean, I think the books are a little bit, maybe not actually, they're probably just right along with True Blood, but I never finished that. But it's that same kind of thing. It's a vampire brotherhood. There's a romance in it. Some of the people are like 300 years old. I kind of like this story a little better than the Sookie Stackhouse. I'm not sure if I would buy this story. Sookie Stackhouse is definitely told from a female point of view, and this is a female writer, but it is told a lot more from a man's point of view. This book skips around to like all the brothers and what they think happened in the story, and it starts out with a bit of a mystery of one of their deaths, and it does the main character, one of the main characters, a girl named Beth, and she has a romantic interlude with the head guy of this brotherhood, and his name is Wrath. And so I think there are a lot of novels, and I think the way this writer writes and how she skips from character to character, that it'll do that throughout the books, but I think each book will focus on someone different. That's just my idea. So this one focuses on Beth and Wrath mostly, and their story. So yeah, it was really good. If you like this kind of thing, I would recommend it, but it's a pretty good novel. The person that recommended to me is a little bit shocking they recommended this to me, but yeah, it was good. Alright, so the very, very last one is one of my favorite, I put it in my favorite book I've read this year, honestly, and it is a really good book, and this is, I mean, if you can read age 8 to 80, whatever, I think this would relate to a lot of different people. It is a nonfiction, and it was very popular last summer, and it is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul, how do you say his name? Kalanithi? I should have looked this up. So this book, not trying to give away much of it, but this book is about a neurologist. Paul is a neurologist. You can see his little picture on the back there. And in the very first part of it, you know he died before finishing this book. In the foreword, I think they tell you that. And then in the prologue that he wrote, you know that he is diagnosed with cancer. The reason this book is so well done, it wasn't like, oh, I read the prose and this is like Shakespeare or something, but this is one of those impact on life books, and it's one of those impact like life books. Like if you want an impactful story, like I would recommend something like 1,000 Planet Suns or Lone Survivor or Shanghai Girls, and I would put that in this category, and that's probably why it was the best of this year, because it's one of those books that makes you think about your own life, and it was well done. So I've read like other brilliant people's works, and it's really hard for them to communicate, like on a simplified level, I would say. But he studied, like he had a love for the English language, and he studied it in his undergrad at Stanford, and a little bit, I think, either at Cambridge or Oxford he studied it, and then he got his medical degree in Yale. And then I think after that he worked somewhere close to Stanford as a neurologist. But this is just about his life story, about his choices in education, of not really knowing what you wanted to do, and then his choices in marriage, of having problems in marriage, and then in neurology, some of like more of his failures. He doesn't romanticize anything. The book is only 200 pages because I guess it was an unfinished manuscript, so it's really short. Even with the prologue, forward, and everything, it's still a really short book. And he just does a really good job of simplifying things and writing simply and concisely writing, because he tells a lot of different stories in this book, but it all strings together smoothly. It all makes sense. It all gravitates towards like normal people. It's not uppity by any means, I guess you would say. And I could see why this was like a bestseller last summer. It still probably is one of the New York Times bestsellers. So it's a really well done book. It is my favorite book I read this year. It's easy to read. You're not gonna get a lot of scientific stuff out of this. It's not one of those kind of books. It's just a life lesson book about choices we make, and like, so if you're facing marriage problems, or there's a huge portion of this book is obviously facing death, like what happens when you think you have 50 years versus only 10 to 2 years or 1 year. So these are all these choices he has to make in his life. Career choices and education choices, and just where he really fits in society and where he really fits in. But it's really well done. It's super easy to read. It's impactful. I would highly, highly recommend this book. So yeah, that was my #1 book of April, and probably so far this year. I know for 100% it'll be making the year-end list. So when Replica comes there, read it. Read this one. That's all the books, all 11 books I read in April, and I'll see you next month in May. And I should be also posting my exciting May releases, like what I think I will want to read in May, or what's coming out in May that I will want to read over the summer. So look out for that one if you're looking for summer reads this summer. And that's everything. Thanks for watching. Bye!